Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Today in Quarantine. It is May 31st, 2020. And wow, it's episode 72, which means we've been in this for a long time. 6 weeks, or 6 times 12 is 72, I think. Yeah, 6 times 12, 72. It's a really long time. And the world just keeps getting more chaotic. So I'm going to talk about that for a little bit today. If you prefer not to listen at this point, because everything's just been sort of like crazy and you want to get away for a little bit, I'm just going to talk about it for 3 or 4 minutes, so you can come back at that point. But if you're avoiding it in order to not feel uncomfortable, you should probably stay and listen. So today is day like 4 or 5 of protests that have been happening around the country, protesting the death of George Floyd. And more than that, also protesting that there are 4 officers who were there. One officer was the officer who kneeled on George Floyd's neck, whereby killing him. And the other 3 were bystanders and were not bystanders. They were standing around and preventing people from helping him, or from helping George Floyd. And so a lot of people are protesting that those 3 officers are not in jail yet. And there have been protests happening around the country. There's actually some protests that are happening around the world. I saw some pictures in Germany and Iran and somewhere else, I think. There's coronavirus still going around. There's something crazy. And this whole for the past 24 or 48 hours or so, the one thought that's been in my mind is, what would Jesus do? Right? That's that age-old question, that slogan that people had on their t-shirts, on their wrists, everywhere, on their sunglasses. What would Jesus do? WWJD. And I was thinking about it today, and one of the things that's interesting to me is that I think sometimes we forget about the fact that Jesus did live in a crazy time. It wasn't like Jesus was going around and was like in a peaceful time where everybody was happy. He was talking to people who were upset because the Romans were constantly oppressing them. And the more and more I think about a parallel between the Israelites and Black Americans and Black people in general, the more I realize how close their stories are. If you might know that a lot of spirituals are based on Go Down Moses or Joshua at the Battle of Jericho. There's a lot of these spirituals that are based around the facts or the Bible stories of Israelites and Israelite groups, because Black people were enslaved, and then at the time that some of these spirituals came about, they hadn't been released yet, but they had been so wanting of the freedom that they wanted, but it just never seemed to materialize. And so the more and more that I think about all these protests, the more I kind of see those parallels. So anyway, Jesus wasn't talking to people who were living great lives. He was talking to people who were probably going through the same thing that a lot of people are going through now, where they're being oppressed simply because they were Israelites, simply because they were Jews. And so there's that. And so I keep kind of rolling over this question in my mind of, what would Jesus do? I listened to the Sermon on the Mount this morning in Matthew 5. And in that, Jesus is talking to these people who want to do something. They want to go and, they want to kill a Roman soldier or something like that. And instead he says, hey, even if you think about murdering or the Bible said, the Ten Commandments say don't murder, but even if you think about murdering, you've already committed it. And so you're like, oh, okay, that kind of I have to revisit my thoughts. And then he says, if somebody, takes your cloak, offer to walk with him a mile, and, just like go the extra mile, do all these things, do to others as you'd want to be done to you. So then the question is, based on all of that, based on the Sermon on the Mount, based on the way we should pray, how we're thinking about others, what would Jesus do? And correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm literally like working things out in my head right now. I'm not like making any theological statement, nothing like that. But let's see how I phrase this. Are we as Christians are we called to be politically active and be like active in protest? Are we called to do that type of thing? If so, is that something that Jesus would have done? Because I'm sure there are protests going on, but he also doesn't really clash that much with Roman officials. He clashes a lot with the church, but he doesn't really clash with Roman officials up until the end of his life. And even then, he's silent. He could have said something when he was being tried and persecuted or for their sake. And even if you look at like the apostles later on, they're, in Acts, a lot of them are being tried. And so like the Jews tried to bring them to to the officials, and the officials were like, they haven't really done anything wrong, but do with them what you will. So in that corrupt government, do the disciples speak out against that? That's a question. That's a literal question that I'm asking, and I'm just going to have to go through and read some more for myself. But thinking about that it's a very real reality for me. I talked to a friend last night about it, actually, and she told me this point, which I thought was very profound. We are called to be our brother's keepers. So we are called to look out for each other, no matter what the race is. But in this case, we are talking about Black people. So we are called to watch out for each other, to be our brother's keeper. And to fight injustice by being Christians and by reaching out to other people. So it's an interesting world that we're living in. But if you are one of those people who is going to join a protest, good on you. I wish you all the best. Stay safe. There are a lot of suggestions on how to protest safely and what you should bring to a protest. And how to do so. So look that up, ask questions before you go, especially if you are Black or a person of color. Make sure you know what you're potentially getting yourself into, because that can be a dangerous thing, is to walk in. I was actually talking to a friend about it last night, and he was pointing out some things that really you have to be aware of when you are going out to protest. So be careful, for sure. Be careful. Anyway, yeah. Well, if you're here in Lincoln, it's a beautiful day to protest. It's just like sun is shining. It's like 75 degrees. It's a beautiful day. The mayor of Lincoln has actually put out a curfew. So if you're in Lincoln, there is a curfew tonight of 8 p.m. Don't be out later than that, please. Or, unless you have to be going to work or it's an emergency or something like that, please stay inside. Hopefully, maybe people will do it now that there's an actual threat rather than a virus. What is life right now? What is life? It's all very confusing. And, the one thing I do say with certainty is, come, Lord Jesus, come. Because it's just getting crazy. But in the meantime, we have to do something. All right. So, moving on to just a little bit of lightheartedness for your Sunday afternoon, evening. Today we've got some dad jokes, the best, which are also the worst. I'm reading a book in Braille currently, and just something bad's gonna happen. I can just feel it. I always start these jokes without the laugh track. It's just oh boy, that's all right. I'll pull it up for the next one. All right. Did you hear about the mathematician that was afraid of negative numbers? He'll stop at nothing to avoid them. There we go. Come on, left track. There we go. Thank you. Thank you. This is actually the first year. It's going to be the first year that I haven't taken a vacation to Paris because of the pandemic. Usually it's due to lack of money. Oh, yeah. That was actually really funny. I used to be addicted to soap, but I'm clean now. Oh man. I nearly got into a fight with somebody at the transplant ward. Do you want a piece of me? I asked him. Okay, guys, you think even the laugh tracks think some of the jokes aren't funny? Or you know what? That's okay. I respect your opinion. I think the jokes are funny. That's all that matters. Truly in a dad joke. When is a door no longer a door? It's a jar. When it's a jar, yeah. I can't. Oh, I get it now. No, I don't get it. Never mind. I was reading a joke and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. But I'll read it anyway. Why did the Kraken, like the sea monster, eat 5 ships that were carrying potatoes? Because nobody can eat just one potato chip. I lost my Oh boy. All right. Last one. In honor of the astronauts that took off yesterday. What is the most used part of a laptop at NASA? The space bar. Oh boy. Which reminds me of something that I saw earlier today. Somebody said, "Congratulations to the 2 astronauts that left Earth yesterday," because because the rest of us can't. So congratulations to them. Good choice. Thank you for joining me on Today in Quarantine. It's been an interesting time to be alive for sure. But my prayers are with you all as you discover and figure out what it is that you need to be doing in this time. And yeah, we'll see you tomorrow in quarantine for another episode of Today in Quarantine. Thank you, and we'll see you later.